we will go into the less studied, archaeal cell structure. So basically, again, although they are phylogenetically different from one another, your archaeal cell are eventually quite the same with your bacterial cell, with just slight modification on its cell structure. Now, most especially when it comes to the cell wall of your archaeal cell. Okay, so without further ado, let's start our discussion for this afternoon. Okay. Now, uh, for your archaea, these are kind of different, no? As comparison to your bacteria because, again, genetically, no, genomically, and phylogenetically, they are recognized as different taxa, wherein your archaea are eventually closer related to your eukarya representatives and your bacteria are quite primitive. In the past, we actually quite think that your archaeans are actually the primitive, form of life, but due to our evidences genetically and phylogenetically, we had now come up with a universal tree of life as to where bacteria really are the primitive forms, and then you have the archaea as well as the eukarya. No, the main evidence for the closely relatedness of our archaeans as well as eukarya are what you call the eukaryotic signature proteins. No, if you can recall our past semester during our systematics course, we already discussed your eukaryotic signature proteins, which are the proteins that can only be found on the branch of the eukarya representatives. But in reality, these are also found in our archaeal branch. No. Um, your archaea also have cellular structures that are similar to bacteria, but the molecules that eventually can make these particular structures are quite similar to eukaryotes. So in a sense, your archaeal are kind of intermediate, no, na siya sa tunga in between your bacteria and your eukarya. So they have the structures that are similar to your bacteria, for example, the cell wall being unicellular in nature, but then the molecules, most especially the proteins, no, are kind of very similar to that of the eukaryotes. No, so they are an intermediate life forms, and then there are also a few archaean species that can be grown in the laboratory. That is why your archaean kingdom is less studied compared to your bacteria because it's kind of hard for the scientists and taxonomists alike to culture archaean representatives under laboratory conditions, no, but there are some that they were able to grow, no, inside the laboratory, and these are now your methanogens, those archaeans that are kanang methane loving, no, so eventually when you go to mga septic tanks, you can eventually get some archaean species there. You also have halophiles, or those archaeans that are kanang loving very very salty environments, no, so if you have kanang Dead Sea, for example, you can eventually see their very kanang common archaeans that are halophiles, no, halophilic in nature. And then you also have the genus Sulfolobus, which are sulfide loving archaeans. So eventually, on in the environment near mga hot springs or with high volcanic activities, you can get these species of archaeans. No? With regards to the cell shape and arrangement, so usually they are spherical, but there are also some recorded archaeans that are rod-shaped, and those that with pleomorphic, meaning varying in terms of their cell shape. And there are also spiral archaeans that had been recorded in the past. No, however, there are no spirochete, no, or the spiral shape which are non-flexible, no, nor mycelia archaean has been recorded in the past, no. So eventually, for the spherical, the rod, itong coccus, bacillus, and the spiral, most especially your spirillum, no, your archaeans also have these particular cell shapes, but never the spirochete. And then when you go to um, another shape, which is the branched, so they have this branched or rhizoid, no, in shape, which kanang unsa ni kanang resembles just like the mycelium of a fungi, no? So when you try to imagine a fungus, mura siyag mukatay, di ba? And that particular network of root-like structure, you can also see that one in your archaeans, no? So eventually, when it comes to cell shapes, in terms of arrangement, and in terms of the molecular structuring of the archaean cell, these are quite variable, no, very varied. But although when you try to summarize the eventual cell structure of your archaeans, they do have the same structures with your bacteria, but the molecules there are kinda representatives of the eukaryotic branch. Here's a general comparison between our bacteria and the archaea. No? So we have here several characteristics. For instance, you have the plasma membrane lipids. No? So for your lipids, for the bacteria, these are ester-linked as opposed to your archaean, which are ether-linked. No? So ester ang isa pud kay ether. When you go to the cell wall constituents, no, for bacteria, they do have the presence of the peptidoglycan molecule, but for your archaea, they don't have the peptidoglycan, but rather they have the pseudopeptidoglycan. No? So we had made mention last time na inyong peptidoglycan, they do have the NAG and the NAM, but for the pseudopeptidoglycan, they only have the NAG and the NAT. No? So as opposed to having the NAM, they do have the NAT. No? And then for the inclusions, both archaean and bacterial cells, they do have inclusions, well as well as your uh, eukaryotic cells, no? Because your inclusions are basically the kanang inorganic compounds, water, and other buffers that are present in your cell. So basically, the cytoplasm is comprised of the living machineries, which are your organelles, as well as the non-living components, which are the inclusions. So inclusions are universally present in all types of cells, no, may it be bacteria, archaea, or eukaryotic in nature. For the ribosome size, for the bacteria and archaea, they have the same size, no? But later on, we will have a deeper kanang discussions on the ribosome size. And then for the chromosome structure, for bacteria, these are mostly circular and double-stranded, no, same as your archaea. So they are also circular and double-stranded in terms of the DNA, no, or um, the chromosomal kanang genetic material, because they also have what you call plasmids, no. So plasmids are different from your chromosomal DNA because these are independent when it comes to the reproduction of the genetic material. So for your plasmids, now these are also circular, but in your bacteria, they can also be linear in nature. Now for archaea, circular ra jud siya. So since these are cell types with circular genetic material, so they don't have histones, for example, because they do not can organize their genetic material the same way as eukaryotes, and you also have they don't also have what you call the telomeres, which are the caps of the chromosomes, because again it's circular, so wala siya terminal point. But when you have the linear genetic material or genetic structure, then that's the time you have the presence of the telomeres to protect the terminal ends of the chromosome, no, para di siya magubot. And since they do not organize the DNA molecule the same way as eukaryotes because of the absence of your histones or other proteins to form the nucleosome, they have what you call kanang supercoiling. No? So instead of coiling the DNA molecule around the histone protein, they have to supercoil it, the DNA itself, no, to form the circular kanang unsa ni shape of the genetic material, no? So that's what you call supercoiling. So instead of having the histones, what they have are what you call the naps, or the nucleotide associated proteins, no? uh, since 'di ba wala man sila nucleus, so what they have is the nucleoid lang, or a specific region in the cytoplasm. So these proteins now, the naps, are named after the nucleoid itself, no, the nucleoid associated proteins, which helps in the organization of the DNA of your bacteria and archaea. So with respect to the external structures, so uh, nainigawas ani ganina sa inyong quiz, no, di ba? You have the fimbriae, which is functioning primarily for the attachment on surfaces. No, flagella is for locomotion. The pili is for reproduction, no, sexual reproduction, most especially during conjugation processes, as to where genetic materials are being exchanged by two individuals. No, in your archaea, the flagella, since it is molecularly different from the bacteria, no, usually the flagella is named as archella, no. So just to denote that this particular flagellum is present in an archaeal cell, no. They also have the peli because they also exhibit conjugation processes, no, during exchange of genetic material. For the capsules or the slime layers, you know, just beyond the peptidoglycan layer, or the outer membrane of your negative gram-negative bacteria, no, the capsules are actually quite present in your bacteria, but these are rare in your archaea. So later we will see that the capsule and the slime layer and the cell wall itself, no, the cell envelope of your archaea are quite varied in terms of the presence of different layers, no. Naiuban nga wala jud siya capsule, naiwalay slime layer, naiwalay cell membrane, but there is kanang S layers, no, and so on. So this is just a general comparison between our bacteria and archaea, no. So structurally they are quite the same, but when you go to the molecules that are actually kanang resembling these particular structures, they are quite different, no. Now, here is a comparison on the archaeal ribosome and eukaryotic ribosomes. No? So, bacterial and archaeal ribosome, di ba, 70S man to sila. By the way, when you say S, this is actually the Svenberg unit, which is a unit of sedimentation coefficient, no? The unit used for the molecules to form sediments during centrifugation. So, when you use the centrifugation machine or the microcentrifuge, if you set the centrifugation unit to 70, that's the time they will eventually form the sediments. So, thus the name 70S, no, ribosome. So, S there stands for the Svenberg unit. Now, you also have, no, two particular parts of your ribosomes. You have the large subunit, and you also have the small subunit. Your small subunit decodes the genetic information coming from the messenger RNA, while your large subunit catalyzes the peptide bond formation. So the large subunit is the one that is eventually creating now the amino acid chain, no, or the peptide bond chain, or the protein itself. Okay? So ang small subunit diha mo attach ang inyong tRNA for it to have the anticodon for the codon of the messenger RNA, no? And after which your tRNA, since they are now carrying with them the amino acid for that particular codon, then if you have a sequence of different tRNA, you will have now a sequence also of peptide bonds. And these peptide bonds are being synthesized by your large subunit of the ribosome. Okay. Now, for the bacterial and archaeal ribosome, for the large subunit, you have there the 50S, and for the small subunit, you have the 30S. No? So, for both Bacteria and archaeal cell, they have the 50S and 30S together. This will become the 70S ribosome for our prokaryotic representatives. But when you go to eukaryotic, no, ribosomes, you also have the large and the small, but this time around you have a greater, no, sedimentation coefficient. So instead of 70S, they have the 80S. So that would also mean that the ribosome of eukaryotes are quite larger compared to your bacteria and archaea as well. And the large subunit is 60S as opposed to the 50S of your bacteria and archaea. And the small subunit would be 40S as opposed to 30S for the bacterial and archaeal ribosomes. No? The ribosomes in your bacteria and archaea, these are found in the cytoplasm of your cell. But for your eukaryotic cell, these ribosomes are found in the cytoplasm or attached to the membrane of your rough endoplasmic reticulum. Now, that's why it's called rough because there is not the presence of ribosomes no attached to it. If there are no ribosomes, so they would eventually become the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. When we compare now the plasma membrane of your bacteria as well as eukarya to our archaean plasma membrane, we can see that there is a difference now in terms of the number of layers. No, so when you go to the bacterial eukaryotes, no, usually we have lipid bilayer, meaning we have two layers of the lipid structure. But in your archaea, you can see that there is no disconnection between the tails of your lipids. So therefore, there is lipid monolayer in your archaean cellular plasma membrane structure. When it comes to the phospholipid tail, for bacteria, no, the tail are kinda unbranched, no, so meaning it's kanang unsa ni linear in terms of structure. But when you go to the archaean, it's linear. However, there are projections, no, um, in the tail of our phospholipid molecule. No, so these are highly branched no, in terms of its structure. So for bacteria, unbranched, or archaea, you have branched. When it comes to the linkages, no, di ba ganina we mentioned the ether and the ester functional groups. So for your archaeal phospholipids, the link that is present there is an ether link. But for our eukaryotic or bacteria, you have there the ester link. No, that links now our glycerol with our phospholipid molecule. Okay. Now, when it comes to the monolayer, no, this is kinda advantageous for our archaeans because the monolayer offers more rigidity as compared to the bilayer, no? Because when you have the bilayer, diba, you have more fluid parts of the cell membrane rather than a more rigid or attached no layers in your monolayer uh, cell membrane. No? So if you try to look at now the difference, because there is now space or detachment between your two phospholipid molecule, our lipid bilayer cell membrane has somewhat fluidic in nature. But if you now have no detachment between the two phospholipids, then this particular cellular structure will give a more rigid kanang unsa ni kanang cell membrane, no? And that's quite important because if you try to look at the environment of our archaea, diba, they are mostly present in the environment that are quite extreme or harsh, no, in terms of its condition. So if you have a more rigid cell membrane, then the internal portion of the cell of your archaeans are actually quite well protected, no? So that's kanang the beauty of having a monolayer no cell membrane. For many archaeans also, kanang an S layer is one of the major and sometimes only component of the cell wall. No, slime layers have been observed in some archaea where they appear to mediate cell-to-cell interactions, but little is known about their composition and regulation. No, capsules are relatively rare among archaea and thus are not discussed in this particular kanang unsa ni not discussed in this particular chapter. No, when we try to look into the layer beyond the plasma membrane, no, you could see that it is kind of diverse in terms of the types of layers that are present. No, a while ago I made mention the S layer, the capsule, and the slime layer. No, so if you try to look at our figure, daghan kayo kag na inlain nga klase nga archaeal cell wall. So as opposed to your bacterial cell wall, no, you only have two types, di ba? You have the gram negative and the gram positive. When you say gram positive, no, they don't have the outer membrane and they have a very thick peptidoglycan layer of the cell wall. But if you do have the gram negative, they have the outer membrane and the peptidoglycan layer of the cell wall is kind of thin. No, but here you would notice that there would be some archaeans with S layer only, no? So after the plasma membrane, S layer na ditsod, wala nilain. So that's kind of a simple anang structure when it comes to the cell envelope of your archaeans. But there are also instances nga naa kay another layer which is your metanochondrotin, no? Another layer which offers rigidity to the cell envelope of your archaeans. Napog kay glycocalyx, no? Na kay polysaccharides, napog kay um, glycoproteins, no? Here, the protein sheets and so on. So eventually, when we try to have the cell wall of our archaeans, it's kinda very complex, no, and very diverse as comparison to our bacteria. So we cannot eventually use, no, cell wall to identify a particular archaean, no, species, whether they belong to a certain group of or not, because the cell wall is very very diverse. No, especially if you can find or isolate an archaean for a particular extreme environment. No, so kung ato ka sa kanang very salty environment, lahi po ang yang cell wall. Kung ato ka sa very cold, lain po yung cell wall, very toxic, lain po yung cell wall, and so on. So it would really depend on the type of harsh environment where your archaeans are actually present or found. No, so very diverse when it comes to cell wall. So when we try now to compare the structures of archaea, bacteria, and eukarya, no, we can summarize it in this particular table. No, so when you have the characters of the membrane lipids, no, for your archaeans, these are highly branched. No? So if you try to recall the structure of the phospholipid, ang iyahang tail na kay branches, marag thorn part sa tail portion sa inyong phospholipid. But when you go to bacteria and eukarya, the phospholipid tail are unbranched. So limpyo siya tan-awon. When you go to the chromosomes, no, the shape of the chromosomes for archaea and bacteria, these are circular. So they do not have the histone proteins, they do not have the telomeres, they don't have the nucleosome, and they only do what you call supercoiling. But when you go to eukarya, these are now linear. They do have these histones. They do have these telomeres. No, as opposed to the presence of the histones, no, archaea, they do have the histones, but for bacteria, they do not have the histones, but they have the nucleoid associated proteins. When you go to nuclear envelopes, so since your archaea and bacteria, they do not have the nucleus, so they also are devoid with the nuclear membrane. Your eukarya, they have the nuclear membrane. No? So for the membrane-bound organelles, your archaea, bacteria, they do lack the membrane-bound organelles. No, most especially your mitochondria, your chloroplast, and the nucleus, no, as opposed to your eukarya, but they do have the structure what you call mesosome, no, which now functions just like the mitochondria and chloroplast, which can do cellular respiration, and photosynthesis. No? When you go to the initial amino acid, no, initiator amino acid for protein synthesis, you have the methionine for your archaea and eukarya. So all um, translation process would start with the methionine amino acid. No? So that's our starting codon. But when you go to your bacteria, they do not have the methionine, but rather they have what you call the N-formyl methionine, which is actually a derivative of your methionine amino acid. No? So instead of having the methionine as the starting amino acid for translation process to occur, in your bacteria, you have the N-formyl methionine, no, a derivative of your methionine amino acid. For the peptidoglycan, so bacteria, they do have the peptidoglycan layer in the cell wall, no, as part of the cell envelope of the cell. But when you go to archaea and eukarya, they do not have the peptidoglycan layer, no. But for the archaea, they have the again pseudopeptidoglycan. For eukarya, it's kinda varying, no? So if you have the cell wall in your eukarya, the cell wall could either be composed of silica, of cellulose, or chitin. No? So when you go to the kingdom protista, they can have the cell wall which are made up of silica. When you go to kingdom plantae, the cell walls are made up of cellulose. And in your fungi, as well as some some representatives of the animalia, no, they have cell wall which are actually made up of chitin, no, or exoskeleton made up of chitin. For your uh, growth inhibitor, no, your bacteria are being inhibited by streptomycin or any other antibacterial or antimicrobial drugs. Your archaea are not eventually affected by these drugs, as well as your eukarya, because these antibacterial and antimicrobial drugs are actually targeting the peptidoglycan structure in the cell envelope of your bacteria. So your antibacterial or antimicrobial drugs, no, they do influence the synthesis of the peptidoglycan, as well as the structure of the peptidoglycan, and therefore if you have the presence of these drugs, they eventually they disrupt the integrity of the peptidoglycan layer, and thus the cell envelope of the bacteria, now making it vulnerable for other processes that can kill or destroy the the organelles, no, or the structures inside the bacterial cell. No? When it comes to histone, again, no, archaea, they have the histones, but the bacteria, they do not have the histones. So this is also an evidence that our archaea is closely related to our eukarya. No? For the RNA polymerase, no, archaean and eukaryan RNA polymerase are quite the same, because what they do have are for eukarya, they have a plenty of distinct, no, RNA polymerases, such as you have RNA polymerase 1, RNA polymerase 2. You also have RNA polymerase 3. For your archaea, the RNA polymerase is very much similar to the RNA polymerase 2 of eukarya. No? So this is another evidence na closely related sa dyan sila. But when you go to bacteria, they only have one particular type of RNA polymerase, no, the RNAP. Um, this is a multi-subunit enzyme, just the same with the archaea and eukarya, but they do comprise of two particular subunits. No? So you have the core enzyme, and you also have the holo enzyme. No? So when you say core enzyme, these forms the RNA polymerase, which is comprised of five subunits, no, na kay duha ka alpha na subunit, isa ka beta subunit, na kay isa ka beta prime subunit, and one omega subunit. But for your holozyme, this includes the entire core enzyme plus what we call a sigma factor. No, ang sigma factor, this is actually the part of the holoenzyme that plays a crucial role, no, in recognizing the specific promoter sequences on the DNA that initiates the transcription process. No? So Again, for the RNA polymerase, your eukarya, very diverse. Kaya naman kay RNA polymerase 1, 2, and 3. For archaea, it is quite the same with your eukaryotic RNA polymerase 2, but for bacteria, they have a very different form of RNA polymerase, which is comprised now of the core enzyme and the holo enzyme. So that's actually the very comparison no, among the archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So if I ask you, for example, what's the main difference of the archaea and what differentiates your bacteria from archaea and eukarya, as well as eukarya from archaea and bacteria. So I hope you can eventually state no, or list down several characters that are distinct for the archaea or bacteria or eukarya, or you can easily differentiate and compare archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So for additional reading, just read your chapter 3 no, for bacterial cell structure and chapter 4 for your archaeal cell chapter. But if you want to have an in-depth understanding as well on the eukaryotic cell structure, you can also read additionally the chapter 6. No? So any questions when it comes to the differentiation of our archaeal and bacterial cell structure? Wala rin question? Okay, so uh, I would hope ha nga you can now distinguish kanang eloquently the differences and the similarities among archaean cell, bacterial cell, as well as a eukaryotic cell. No? So naag kay daghang similarities, but they also have a wide plethora of differences no, among these types of cell. Okay, now let's move on to the diversity of the kingdom Protista. So, basically, for the kingdom Eubacteria and kingdom Archaebacteria, this has been discussed no, together with the discussion of the bacterial and archaeal cell structure. So now we will jump into the diversity in the kingdom Protista. So when we say diversity here, we are actually looking into the morphology no, or the physical characteristics of Protista, but not on their genetic level. No? So, nata sa iyahang taxonomy, no? What we can see eventually. So, to start, your kingdom Protista is actually a kingdom which is a catch-all basin for all organisms that cannot be categorized in other kingdoms. So in a sense, your kingdom protista kay mura siya basurahan sa inyong life forms nga lisod kaayo i-categorize as animal, plant, fungi, no, or bacteria, no, or archaea. So katong mga organisms nga dili jud sila ma-classify as such and they are unicellular in nature or colonial in nature, then they would end up with the kingdom protista eventually. No? So they do lack common evolutionary heritage because, again, these are quite varied organisms that are coming from different no, branches of the tree of life. No? So eventually, wala jud sila commonalities no, when it comes to their evolutionary relationship. Historically, your kingdom protista is divided into three particular branches or three groups. So you have the early forms of animals, which are named protozoa. You also have the early forms of plants, which are the protophyta. And you have also the early forms of fungi, which is the protomycota. So, katong mga organisms nga dili kanang animals, but they are non-photosynthetic, they are under the protozoa. Those kanang organisms which are photosynthetic with cell wall but are not plants, they are under the protophyta. And those non-photosynthetic with cell wall but are not categorized as fungi are actually under the protomycota. No? So ang katong mga salin-salin sa inyong kingdom fungi, plantae and animalia diri padong sa protista, no? So they have one particular universal characteristic of your kingdom protista is that they lack higher cell organization. No? For example, they are not multicellular in nature. So all your protista are actually unicellular, but some are colonial in nature. No? So when you say colonial, the cells are found or living together, no, as a community, but they are not resembling a single entity or a single organism, no, but they are living together, no, more sa siyang populations, but not populations of multicellular organisms, but populations of unicellular organisms, no, a colony of unicellular organisms. And one particular major requirement for your protist is the presence of moisture, because your protist, just like your archaea and bacteria, these are unicellular. So therefore, the acquisition of nutrients and any other compounds from the environment is through kanang simple diffusion and active transport. No? So they really need to have moisture or water to create concentration gradient. No? Kaya kung wala manggoy concentration gradient, if you have isotonic environment, then there would be no movement of solutes or compounds or dissolved nutrients in your water. No? So it is essential for your kingdom protista, no, representatives to live in an environment with ample amount of moisture. Now, your protists, no, since they are unicellular organisms, they can be found virtually anywhere, no, anywhere basta na ay moisture. So it could be in the soil, no, even the air could have their cyst formation, no, um, food, no, in our water bodies, no, fresh water and marine. So virtually anywhere, no, you can eventually have proteins, and therefore they are maintaining balance in terms of the cycling of nutrients in our environment. No? So they are part of the detritivore population in the food web. They're also part of the nutrient recyclers as to where they convert organic matter back to inorganic forms. No? So protists are very essential or very important in that matter, no, ecologically speaking. Now, when it comes to their nutritional strategies, there are ample ways, no, for your proteins to gain, no, energy and get food. So one would be what you call osmotrophy, as to where the acquisition of soluble compounds are being acquired after the release of enzymes that degrades your dead organic matters in their surroundings. So your saprophytes, for example, no, in the form of pwede po mga kanang ciliates, no, and you have mga tardigrades, no. These are actually saprophytic in nature because they release enzyme that would degrade the organic matter. So there is external digestion of these organic compound, and after the external digestion, kung kanang watery na or fluid na ang ilahang organic matter, then that's the time they can eventually kanang acquire these nutrients. No? So that's osmotrophy. So with the build up or the degradation of the organic compound or nutrients, they build up the kanang concentration of nutrients outside the cell. So eventually, through diffusion process, ang katong mga nutrients would eventually move towards the inside portion of the cell. No? So osmosis ba, kumbaga, no? Osmotrophy. You also have what you call holozoic nutrition. So in your holozoic nutrition, uh, this is the phagocytosis of a particular smaller unicellular organism or organic matter for them to acquire nutrients. No? Holo meaning whole and zoic meaning animal. So ilahang gikaon, holy, no, gitone nila ang organic matter or a smaller cell, no, through phagocytosis process. So that's holozoic, meaning this is heterotrophy in nature, no? May kaon sila other organism. As opposed to what you call autotrophy, no? no? Auto meaning self, trophy meaning nourish. So they can nourish their own self because they can manufacture their own food with the aid of the presence of sunlight. No? So in this case, since they are making their food through sunlight, then this is what you call photoautotrophy. No, uh, um, photo meaning light, so they can eventually manufacture their own food with the presence of light, as opposed to chemoautotrophy. No, chemo meaning chemical, so they can manufacture their own food with the presence of chemicals in their surrounding environment. So wala po di siya sunlight. But there are no known proteins that can do chemoautotrophy. No? Ang makadu sa chemoautotrophy are actually bacteria and archaeans that are found in the deepest portion of our oceans. No? Most especially in hydrothermal vents. No? Muna sila ang environment nga devoid of sunlight, but they do have ample amount of chemicals in their surroundings. No? Thus, chemoautotrophy. You also have what you call mixotrophy. No? Mix meaning combined, gihalo. Unsay gihalo? Gihalo ang pagka-heterotrophic o ang pagka-autotrophic sa inyong proteins. So they can now eventually use organic matter, no, or CO2 as carbon sources. So if they are using CO2 as a carbon source, that means they can now photosynthesize, no. They have this particular autotrophic power. But if they are using organic matter as a source of carbon source, then these carbon organic matter are eventually in the form of glucose. So therefore, these are actually in a form of cellular respiration. So mixotrophy meaning your proteins can either photosynthesize or they can either eat other organisms. So nakombine na ang inyong cellular respiration and photosynthesis, or being a producer and being a carnivore, no, in that instance. Now, when it comes to the external or cellular morphology of your proteins, no, they do have the cell membrane, no, because all cells they do have cell membrane. But underneath the cell membrane, they have what you call the pellicle. No, your pellicle is a flexible proteinaceous layer, no, which is located just beneath the plasmalemma, or the same with your cell membrane. No? Imuhang plasmalemma, cell membrane, kanang unsa pa ni siya, plasma membrane, no? Pareha ra na silang tanan. They do refer to that external membrane that is covering our cell. No? So in your proteins, underneath the cell membrane, they have what you call the pellicle. And these are quite flexible. As opposed to the cell wall of your bacteria and archaea, they do not have the pellicle, but they have the cell wall which is rigid. That's why the shape of your archaea and bacteria, they are kind of definite. But when you go to protists, since they have a flexible layer underneath the cell membrane, pwede nilang ma-change ang ilahang shape, no, or cellular shape. The pellicle is a defining characteristic of many protozoans, no, and they act as a flexible armor that protects the cell without hindering the protist's movement. No? So unlike the cell wall, it's for protection, but it's not for movement. But here, pellicle can act as a protective layer, but also it aids in the locomotion of your protist. No? Another significant morphology that we can find in your protista, most especially for your ciliata, no, or those protists that are having many cilia, no, are the presence of what you call macronucleus and micronucleus. No, so what's the difference between the macro and the micro? No, the difference there morphologically is the size. So macro dako, ang micro gamay. But what's the difference in terms of their function? So when you say macronucleus, this is for the vegetative growth and gene expression of the protist. No? So eventually, all of the cell's normal activities, no, metabolic chemical reactions, no, mga hydrolytic kanang functions of the cells are actually being kanang supervised by the macronucleus. But when you go to micronucleus, this is for sexual reproduction as well as genetic exchange during conjugation process. Okay, so conjugation means there is horizontal gene transfer or transfer of genetic materials from one individual to the next, but there is no production of a daughter cell. No? So conjugation is not really a reproduction kanang process, no? But there is an exchange of genetic material. So that's the main difference of your macro and the micronucleus. The macro for the normal activities of the cell. For your micronucleus, these are more on sexual reproduction, no, ng mga processes as well as genetic exchange, no, through conjugation process. Another would be the cytoplasm of our proteins. No, the cytoplasm, unlike any other cellular types, they have the ectoplasm and also the endoplasm. No? So when you say ectoplasm, these are clear gel-like outer layer, more rigid compared to your, compared to your endoplasm. No? So ang imuhang ectoplasm kanang transparent, clear, gel-like, no? And is more rigid compared to your endoplasm. And it provides structural support, no, to help maintain kanang cellular shape, as well as it also helps in the locomotion, no, just like your pellicle. Um, your ectoplasm also contributes to the movement, most especially for your amoeboid protists, no, kanang inyong mga amoeba, which would eventually kanang create what you call pseudopod, no, or pseudopodia formation for locomotion. So since the cytoplasm, the shape there, um, as well as the cell membrane and the pellicle are kind of flexible, so they can now protrude some of the kanang sa ni cytoplasmic materials and the cytoplasm itself as projections for it to move from one place to another. No? So that's the very function for ectoplasm. So clear, rigid, and for cell shape and locomotion. As opposed to your endoplasm. No? So endoplasm, endo meaning inner. So this is the inner part of the cytoplasm of your proteins. And these are more fluid in terms of its consistency, no? Meaning dili siya gel-like, no? More watery siya. And it contains now the cells, organelles, no, as well as the inclusions, no. Um, the kana unsa ni majority of the cell's metabolic processes are happening inside the endoplasm, no, including kanang mga energy production, synthesis of biomolecules, of proteins, nucleic acid, carbohydrate or lipids, and as well as the transport of materials within the cell. So eventually, ang endoplasm mismo, this is the actual cytoplasm as to where metabolic processes can occur, no? Transport of materials and other cellular processes. In your ectoplasm, this is more on the rigidity of the cell shape, no? Maintenance of the cell shape, as well as the locomotion of your proteins. When you go to vacuoles, no, so um, plant cells, they do have vacuoles, no? But also protists, they have vacuoles, but they have two types, no? One is for kanang osmoregulation, no, which are your contractile vacuole, and the other one is for food digestion, no, which is your phagocytic vacuole. So when you say osmoregulation, it regulates now the amount of water inside the cell, no. So ilahan na silang expel out ang extra water molecule outside towards the environment. This is very important, most especially for our kanang freshwater protists, no? Wherein if you are living in a freshwater habitat, you are exposed to hypotonic solution, no? So when you say hypotonic, daghan kay water molecule sa gawas, so therefore the movement of your water molecule would be from the outside or from the environment going inside the cell. So to prevent yourself from bursting, no, para dili sila mga butog, mga matay, they have the contractile vacuole, no, to regulate the exchange of water molecule. So kung ni-build up na ang water concentration inside the cell, your contractile vacuole would eventually expel out the excess water, no, para dili mo buto ang inyong protease. For your phagocytotic vacuole, they contain enzymatic kanang molecules which are kanang unsa ni molecules that can eventually um, hydrolyze or degrade or digest, no, food particles coming from the environment. So mura silang tiyan sa inyong protease, no? If you are comparing now your protease to an animal cell, the counterpart of the phagocytic vacuole would be the lysosome. No, ang lysosome kay naaman po siya mga enzymes that can degrade food particles. Another characteristic that is found in our protease are what you call the cytostome and the cytoproc. No? So cytostome, these are what you call the cell mouth. So mo nang agianan kung asa mo enter ang food particle, and your cytoproc are the cell anus or the anal pore, no, as to where mogawas pud ang inyong waste products, no. So mura sad siya og kanang animal jud, no, nga naay sudlanan, naapoy gawasanan sa hugaw, no. Mosulod ang food wherein you have the cytostome, and then mogawas ang waste through the cytoproc. When it comes to the life history of our protists, no, ang ang ato ang protease life cycle is very much um, complex as compared to some of our animal and plant cell counterparts, no, because you have different stages that they eventually undergoes, no. So you also have here trophozoite na kay cyst. Wala lang na ko na-mention, but you can also have mga schizont, no, mga gamont, no, gametocyte, sporocyte, daghan kaayong stages. But let's just go to the general life cycle of the kingdom Protista, no. The first stage is what you call a trophozoite. Okay, so in your trophozoite, this is the actively growing, reproducing protist. So if you have a vegetative cell nga permi mo kaon, permi mo grow, and permi mo develop, these are actually the trophozoite, no? So mura ni silang active kanang stage sa inyuhang cell. But when you go to the dormant stage of your protist, you call them as the cyst na. So in your bacteria, di ba, we made mention that they have endospores. But here in your protist, they have the cyst stage. So the structure are quite different, but the function is the same. No? What's the function? They protect the viable protist inside the cyst during adverse conditions or harsh conditions. No? So, mohimo silang dormant kung ang ilang environment would become very, very antagonistic for them to survive. No? Another is that the cyst could also give advantage to our protists, which are highly parasitic in nature. No? So, for example, if ang protista ninyo musud na sa ato ang lawas, atong lawas naaman jud tay immune system and other structures nga mo fight against foreign bodies. So for them to protect themselves from these immune systems and immune response, no, they eventually undergo the cyst stage. No, maunang, for instance, kung naay amoebiasis, no, or malaria, there are instances nga after months or after several years nga naayo mo re-emerge ang symptoms sa malaria and amoebiasis because you still have there the cyst of the protease, no? Nitago ra sila sa inyong liver cells. That's also the advantage of having cyst if the protists are parasitic in nature, no? With respect to the protist reproduction, they can eventually undergo sexual or asexual reproduction. No? So when they are going asexual reproduction, this is through what you call binary fission. No? When you say binary fission, mo split ran sila into two. And the two cells there, the daughter cells, would become two independent and isolated organisms, no? So asexual because there is no genetic recombination, there is no crossing over, there is no exchange of genetic material between two individuals, no? Ni tunga lang siya, yan, i-form na siya duha ka organism, and that's it, no? Asexual reproduction. So binary fission is just mitotic division, no, of one cell, no? In this case, your protestant cell, okay? When you go to sexual reproduction, no, there are kanang unsa ni, there are structures or cells that are called what you call gamones, no, most especially for our apicomplexan protist, no. So kaning mga apicomplexan nato mo ni sila mga plasmodium nga species, which they do have very complex life cycle, no, daghan kay silang stage. But for the apicomplexan, no, they do eventually create the gamete stage, which is the precursor or prerequisite for it to become the gametocyte. And ang gametocyte, mo na ni siya ang reproduce to make the gametes, and the gametes would now fuse together to form a diploid cell, which is the kanang mature plasmodium species, no. So from plasmodium mo himo sila og gametes, no, coming from your gamotes and then gametocytes, and then ang kaning gametes mo kanang combine ni sila within the body of the vector mosquito, and from that mosquito inject niya sa humans, from humans mahimo na sana siya schizont, mahimo siya ring stage, mahimo siya trophozoite, mahimo siya cyst, for example, kung adverse na condition, and then goes back to gamotes, gametocyte, and then gametes, no. So very very complex, but yeah, some protists can do sexual reproduction, no. There are also kanang sexual reproduction wherein the union of the gametes can either be isogamy or anisogamy. So when you say isogamy or anisogamy, it has something to do with the size of your gametes. So if the egg and the sperm are of the same size, then that is what you call isogamy. But if they are different sizes, no, dako ang isa kay gamay, that is what you call an isogamy, no. As opposed to us humans, di ba, we have non-motile egg, which is fertilized by a motile sperm, that is what you call an oogamy. So lahi po ng atua. So ilaha isogamy or anisogamy. So it has something to do with the differences sa size. Now, for the classification of our protists, no, in the past, kanang they are actually classified based on the locomotory structures. No, for example, you have the group Mastigophora for those who are flagellated. So meaning protists with flagella or hair-like structure for locomotion, they are under the group Mastigophora. You also have the group Ciliata for ciliates. So naapod kay row of cilia, no, for locomotion. You have the ammoids, no, those who are actually moving through what you call pseudopodia, no? So they are grouped together under the group Sarcodina. And then you have the stationary forms, katong mga sessile, which are actually anchored to a particular substrate. So these are now what we call sporozoa, no? So eventually, sa una, the classification is based on the locomotion, no? And when you go to the exercise that I had sent you last week, no? Exercise, sa to? Exercise 3 ba to? Kinsay nakabasa na or naka-start na sa inyong exercise 3? May I see the hands kung kinsa to naka-start or wala pa naka-start? Or kinsa to nakabasa? Wala pa nakabasa. Wala pa, sige. So in your laboratory exercise 3, the classification there is actually quite different with what I'll be discussing here sa lecture. Because what we are using in the lab exercise is actually the classification scheme of Corliss, no, about 1985 man siguro to, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere around that year. But for our lecture here, we're actually looking into the classification of the International Society of Protistologists around 2005. So this is kanang more recent, no? So uh, we shall have several supergroups that are not found in your laboratory exercise. So kanang ayon lang mo kalibog because lain-lain ang ilahang group, but these are actually based on different classification schemes, no? So later ato niyang tan-awon kung unsa ang difference na when it comes to the classification of Corliss and the classification of the International Society of Protistologists, no? Okay, so let's start with the first supergroup. Now you have what you call the excavata. So the excavata would eventually refer to kanang mga protists which are characterized by conspicuous kanang ventral feeding groove or your cytostome. Di ba? Katoy lang ba? This one, kanang, I don't know if makita ninyo akong arrow, but kanang naay groove diha kanang depression as to where mo sulod ang inyong pagkaon. So that's why the name excavata, no? Excavate, hollowed out. And then under your supergroup excavata, you have a big group of fornicata, no? So in your fornicata, they have what you call the metasomes. They do not have the mitochondria, no? Which is kanang, di ba, an organelle which produces the ATP for energy. But for your fornicata, they have the metasomes, no? To produce the iron sulfur protein production. So your iron sulfur protein production, this helps now in kanang unsa ni in creating the triphosphate no structure in our adenosine triphosphate. So they help in the phosphorylation of adenosine diphosphate to become adenosine triphosphate. No, most of our fornicata are free living. No, so they are found in waters and highly polluted with nutrients. So if you have eutrophication process or kanang excessive inputs of nutrients, no, most especially kung may mga laban, may mga ligo sa inyuhang kanang sapa, no, usually these kanang lead to high inputs of nutrients, so mas mudaghan po ang inyuhang mga fornicates, no. Uh, you have kanang few fornicata which can develop cyst stage just like your Giardia lamblia. So your Giardia lamblia is highly parasitic, no? They reside in our digestive tract, most especially in our small intestine. So mura ni silang mo form og mat, kanang mopilit sila sa wall sa tong intestine, o nya since daghan man ni sila, so mo form sila og mat, they would now eventually cover the intestinal wall, hindering us to absorb the nutrients coming from our food. So kinsa may mo absorb sila na kay sila naman himog wall, nangapilit naman sila dito sa intestine, no? So your Giardia are highly parasitic, no, in nature, and they are under fornicata. Another big group under the supergroup excavata is what you call the Parabasalia, no? So for your Parabasalia, these are flagellated again. They are mostly kanang endosymbiont of animals, so they are found inside animals. They lack cytostome, so they feed through phagocytosis, no? So although wala sila katong groove, but they can eventually phagocytosize, no? There are two main groups under Parabasalia. You have Trichonymphida, which are obligate mutualist in insects. They are the ones who secrete the cellulase. So ang insects makadegrade, makadigest sila sa plant cell. But your Trichonymphida, they are asexual, but they can become sexual if they are triggered by the ecdysone coming from the insect. Your ecdysones are actually kanang hormones that induces what you call ecdysis process. Now, when you say ecdysis, mo ni siya ang pag-shed sa outer exoskeleton sa inyuhang insects. Kana ganing mo molt na sila, no? So that's ecdysis. And the ecdysone, the hormone, which could also trigger the sexual reproduction of our Trichonymphida. The other group is what you call Trichomonadida, no? Mga Trichomonas. They have no mitochondria, But what they have is the hydrogenosome. So, di ba your hydrogenosome is one particular product of endosymbiotic theory, no? As to where your cell is anaerobic, so they do not eventually use oxygen gas as the final electron acceptor, but they are actually using uh, hydrogen gas and producing CO2 through fermentation process. No? So wala sila mitochondria, na sila hydrogenosome. And they produce asexually, no? So meaning dali silang managhan. And this is quite advantageous because Trichomonadida, no, some genus of Trichomonas are actually kanang parasitic in nature, no. So for example, we have Trichomonas vaginalis, which is one of kanang mga sexually transmitted diseases in humans, no, trichomoniasis. And then you also have the group Euglenozoa, no? So Euglena from the name itself, your Euglena are actually photosynthetic in nature because they have the green pigment chlorophyll, no? And mostly they are found in fresh waters. So kung makakita mo ka ng ponds na color green, no, usually these are actually Euglena, no, or Euglenozoa. So there are two types. You have euglenoids. So these are the photosynthetic representatives of euglenozoa. They have light receptor, no, so that they can eventually go to the light sources and photosynthesize. But you also have parasitic forms of euglenozoa, and these are now your trypanosomes, no? Trypanosoma pod. Your trypanosomes are parasites of plants as well as humans, and they are having a global significance because these are quite also deadly, no? Makamatay sa din yung trypanosomes. For instance, you have leishmania, no, which is causing the leishmaniasis by sandfly. You also have the trypanosoma cruzi, which causes the Chagas disease, no, transmitted by kissing bugs. I don't know if nakakita na mo kissing bugs, but we do have plenty of kissing bugs, no, there is sa Philippines. And you also have Trypanosoma brucei, which is causing now the African sleeping sickness transmitted by the chichi fly. No? So for Leishmania, Trypanosoma, Cruzi, and Brucei, no, Leishmaniasis, Chagas disease, and African sleeping sickness, one common symptom would be unsa ni, kanang sakit-sakit sa joints and fever and vomiting. No? For Trypanosoma cruzi, this is transmitted by the kissing bug kay usually ang kani sila nga insects, I think na ko picture no, here, no. So Rhidoviidae or the kissing bugs, kay during sleeping time mo bite ni sila sa inyong naong or cheek na area. That's why the term kissing bugs, no. And they do transmit the kanang Chagas disease. I think nakakita na siguro mo ani, no, daghan ni sa atong balay. So be careful. And then they can induce vomiting, the loss of appetite, disease, and even fever and even death. No, this one here is the trypanosoma, which is kanang unsa ni being unsa ni kanang what's the term nakalimot ko, being carried, no, by the chichi fly, no. So when you say katong African sleeping sickness, the name suggests that there is now the disruption in the kanang sleep and wake time of a person. So ma-disrupt na ang biological or circadian clock, no. That would mean that during daytime pirmi katugon ang tao, and that could ultimately lead to coma, no. So African sleeping sickness, na sleep sila, wala na jud sila kamata, no. That's also very very deadly, no. This one here is your euglena. So they have this eye spot, which is a photoreceptor. Mupudi sila ang ngita sa inyohang light sources. And they do have the green pigment here, so they can eventually photosynthesize. So very much kanang unsa ni, kanang opposing in terms of their nutritive behavior, because this one is photosynthetic and the other one is parasitic. So but they are still kanang grouped into one single group, no, which is euglenoid Luginozoa under Excavata. Another supergroup, no, aside from your supergroup Excavata, you also have the supergroup Amoebozoa. No? So amoeboid in nature. So you have now the presence of pseudopodia or the false feet, and they can be rounded, no, lobopodia, or long and narrow, what you call philopodia, or nut-like, no, reticulopodia. But all of them are actually pseudopodia, no? Or false feet. Pseudo meaning false, pod meaning feet. Under your supergroup Amoebozoa would be the group of Tubulinia. No? For your Tubulinia, an example would be our Amoeba proteus. Okay? So they inhabit almost any environment, again, with moist. No? Kay, mao man na ilang means of material transport. They are also free living, but some are parasitic in nature. That's why you have the disease amoebiasis, no? Because the cause for that particular disease is an amoeba. Another group under amoebozoa is what you call Intamibida, no? For your Intamibida, Intamoeba histolytica is the very most common example under Intamibida, no? They lack mitochondria but has mitosomes, no? Pareha ganina for your iron and sulfur kanang unsa ni molecule acquisition. And then for their lifestyle, no, behavioral lifestyle, they can be commensal or parasitic in nature. So they can be kind of present in your organism, and they cannot cause any harm or benefit, but most of them also are very much parasitic. So your Entamoeba histolytica is the main cause of what you call amoebic dysentery. So if you have kanang contamination of Entamoeba, that means nga dapit siguro mo og piggery, for example, because these are kanang commensals of pigs, no? So kung naay mga contamination in water and food because of their proximity to piggery, then most probably the cause of mga diarrhea dito is your Entamoeba histolytica, no? Another group would be your Eumycetozoa, no? So for your Eumycetozoa, you have kanang common name as slime molds. So eventually, the name could be very much confusing because it says molds, but they are not fungi. No, they're actually protists. No, in nature. So they have what you call plasmodium or a mass of protoplasm. This is the main body of your slime molds, no, that forms your fruiting bodies when starved or dry. So there are two types of your slime molds. You can have the acellular, which forms a multi-nucleated plasmodium. So one big mass, dili siya differentiated into several cells, but that one big mass, you have numerous nucleus inside. You can also have the cellular slime mold, which is made up of several cells that are living together. No, so you have your pseudoplasmodium because it's not a true plasmodium because they are made up of several independent cells. No, so you have cellular and cellular. Another supergroup under your protista is what you call the SAR, no, SAR, which stands for straminophiles, alveolates, and rhizaria. Okay, so these are monophyletic, so that's why they are now grouped together in one supergroup. No? And this includes now our kanang important protist, which are your rhizaria, no, the radiolaria and foraminifera, which are now one kanang major contributor in the atmospheric oxygen, no? And we also have katong inyohang um unsa ni siya, mga apicomplexans, no? So here you have axopodia, no, meaning kanang these are actually cellular projections that are used for feeding. So in your Rhizaria, you have two major groups. You have Radiolaria and you have Foraminifera. No? So the major difference here is that the skeletal morphology of your Radiolaria are highly variable, no? And the skeleton is made up of silica. No? So ang kaning skeleton niya, this is also called the test or the cell wall of your Radiolaria. No? So when you go to your Foraminifera, the Philopodia katong for feeding are arranged in network. No? Some are free-living planktonic forms, but most are benthic. So when you say benthic, they are found at the bottom layer of kanang your seas, no? Sa sedimentary layer. And the first examples of denitrifying eukaryotes are your foraminiferan, no? And they form the ooze. So what do you mean by ooze? Kung mamatay na inyong foraminiferan, all the tests there, kanilang mga cell walls, they would eventually settle down at the sedimentary layers. They will create the sediments, and those sediments now are what we call the ooze. No? So, mo na siya ang kanang mo form kung daghang mamatay nga for foraminifera. And your ooze is quite important because these are quite highly nutritious and very much rich in calcium. And in your marine habitat, your calcium is very important for your calciferous organism to form their houses, no? Most especially your coral reefs and other phyto and zooplanktons. So here's an example of your radiolaria and foraminifera. No, so for the radiolaria, if you try to look at the body plan, it's radial. No, so in your foraminifera, kanang highly kanang unsa ni siya spherical also. No, when you go to the second group of your supergroup SAR, no, you have now your alveolates or alveolata. So under your alveolata, no, I made mention about the apicomplexa. Your apicomplexa very complex, and all of them are parasitic. So these are now your plasmodium, which is the main cause of our malaria. No, so global in terms of its significance. And your plasmodium are being transmitted by your mosquitoes, no, most especially the Anopheles gambiae. Okay, so other members of your alveolata, you also have the Ciliophora, which are your protists that have the kanang cilia, no, for locomotion, and you also have the dinoflagellates. No, dinoflagellates are marine planktons. So these are all under your alveolata. So here is an example of a dinoflagellate. No, so you have there the flagella. That's the name, flagellate, no, dinoflagellate. For cilia, you have the ciliate, cilia, no, running along the body length of your, I think this is a paramecium. And then your apicomplexans, you have the what you call apical complex at one terminal end of the protist, which is highly advantageous for their parasitic nature. No? So the apical complex helps them kanang invade their host cells. And then the last group under your supergroup SAR are your Straminopila. No? So under this one, you have photosynthetic kanang protists, no? And they are said to be heterocons, so meaning they have two flagella nga lain-lain og kanang length, no? Lain-lain gitas-on. And under this, you have two groups. No, you have your Basilia rheophyta, and you also have the labyrintholids. Malisod naman kaya mga terms. For your Basilia rheophyta, they possess chlorophyll A and C, and your carotenoid kanang brown coloration, and they also have what you call the frostule. No? So you have the larger part of the frostule, which is the epitheca, and the smaller, which is the hypotheca. So just imagine kanang mga bivalves. No, you have two shells, kana ay two valves, but the two shells here are actually quite different in terms of size. Mas dako ang inyong epitheca, niya mas gamay ang hypotheca. No, ang hypotheca ang nasa ubos, ang inyong epitheca ang nasa babaw. And then for your labyrintholids, no, they grow on plants and algae in marine habitats. They're also heterocons, so meaning duha again ka flagella with varying lengths, and they are considered as fungi at some point in time. No, These are your labyrintholids. So mura sa siyang fungi when it comes to its kanang rhizoid, no, kanang shape-like structure when it crawls on a particular surface. And then lastly, you have the group of Archaeoplastida. So under this group, you have the group Chloroplastida, no? Meaning chloro, no? You have the presence of chlorophyll. So as opposed to your kanang as opposed to your Basilia rheophyta, you have your chloroplastida, they have chlorophyll A and B. Sa inyo hamanggong Basilio rheophyta, they have the chlorophyll A and C, no? And here they are found in aquatic habitat. Um, if they are terrestrial, they are found inside, no, other organisms. They have wide body forms. No? So some are unicellular to colonial, some can be filamentous or membranous or tubular. So example of your chloroplastida, you have now your Chlamydomonas, no, with two flagella of equal lengths. So dili na sila heteroconts and has two small contractile vacuole at the base of the flagella or osmoregulation. So what I'm presenting to you are actually kanang mga examples of kanang protist representatives that we have eventually as kanang slide samples in our laboratory. So sa inyohang laboratory exercise 3, so all of what we have discussed here are actually found in your lab 3, but our challenge now is how do we kanang align the classification of Corliss and the classification of International Society of Protistologists, no? So para dili ta maglibog what is depicted in our laboratory exercise 3, we will retain it at our laboratory class. And for these super groups that are kanang classified under the ISP 2005, we will also be only discussing this one in our lecture classes. No? But be sure nga kabaw pod mo unsa nay difference sa ato ang classification. So that's the challenge really in doing taxonomy because kanang every several years ma-change jud ang inyong classification scheme, no? So ganahan lang ko nga makita po ninyo ang naay evolution in terms of taxonomy ba. Okay? So I think that's my last slide for Kingdom Protista. Nawala na akong tingog. Pero are there any questions or clarifications? No? Naari jud ni siya tanan sa ato ang kanang reference book with kanang nalansad ko gipang supplement diri nga other sources. Pero the main idea is found in our reference book, no? So kindly kanang open your reference book and then read na lang pod, no, for additional informations and details. Okay? Time check 4:55. So walay pangutana. So for our laboratory time, no, kindly do your laboratory exercise 3 because tomorrow we will have the report for exercise 3. No, silang Abigail man siguro to nga group. Tama ba Abigail? Kamo ugma no? Mo present. And then after the presentation of group 3 tomorrow, we will have the short quiz again, no? And then after which I'll also give you our laboratory exercise 4 for you to work with. So by next meeting, we will have Kingdom Fungi, and on Thursday, we will also have the report for laboratory exercise 4, no, Kingdom Fungi. Okay? So, walay pangutana or clarifications? We shall end now our kanang session for this afternoon. Abigail, yes.
Hi, sir. Sir, sa imong sequence of the reporter, sir, kami ang Group C, dahil Laboratory Exercise 5.
5 day mo? Wait sa
Yes, okay. Thank you, sir.
akong i-check kinsa ganito.
Group F man ata, sir, if I remember correctly.
Group F. Kasi Group F.
Yes.
Silang Cherry. Sige lang, akong i-confirm lang niya. Pero kung wala na questions, so we shall end our session for this afternoon. So thank you everyone for listening and see you tomorrow for the reporting sa lab. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, sir.
Bye,
Bye,
sir.
And thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Amping.
sir. Amping, sir.
Amping, bye-bye.